question 8 had 3 parts, A, B and C, and each part focused on the topic of reducing balance depreciation. And what you were given was a graph, and it said this demonstrates the computer's carrying value over its useful life. So we've got a non-current asset which at the beginning of its life had a cost or carrying value of 50,000. It was being used for 5 years, at which point its carrying value was 3,888. So the first question you were asked was, from the graph, determine the depreciation expense for year 2. So this actually seems more difficult than it is. All we've got to do is look at, well, what was the carrying value at the start of the year, for that year being year 2. At the beginning of the year it had a carrying value of 30,000, and at the end it had a carrying value of 18,000, so that must mean it was depreciated a total of $12,000. The second part you're asked to answer was, what was the estimated residual value of the computer system? And I think a lot of students probably thought this was more difficult than it was. This was actually given to you, so if you understand the concept of depreciation, you understand that here's the carrying value, and each year it's obviously going to be used a certain amount. We call that depreciation, and then at the end of that year the bit that's unused is its carrying value. So this computer had a useful life of 5 years. Well, at the end of that period its carrying value was 3,888. So that must have been what the owner estimated its residual value would have been back at the beginning of its useful life. And all residual value will represent is the economic benefits that the business doesn't think it will use of the computer. And so that must be the amount that's left over at the end of year 5 in terms of the carrying value. So all you had to do for this was actually put in 3,888 as the estimated residual value, and there was 1 mark for each of those numbers. Looking at the average, it was 1.3 out of 2. 22% of the state got 0. 1 out of 2 was 28% of the state, and half of the state did actually realise that this was a pretty easy question, and they were able to get 2 out of 2. Looking at the examiner's comments, remember to determine annual depreciation expense, compare the carrying value of an asset from year to year. That's simple. Sometimes it's given to you like it was in 2014, other years it's not. You need to figure it out yourself. And also be prepared for any graphical representations of financial data. So that's a skill in itself. In the real world, a lot of data is presented in graphs, so the fact that you can interpret that is a really valuable skill, and that's why this is a good question. It sort of assessed your ability to be able to interpret a graph.